I've actually seen some of our customers do some pretty interesting things. Like they've changed the role of recruiter, and those people are responsible not for the administration of the recruiting workflow, but for connecting with people, selling them on the company and the organization, strategizing on the types of roles and skills that will be required for that business to accelerate to its next step in growth and capability. And that is a more strategic, collaborative role around the growth of the business than what recruiting has unfortunately become in so many organizations, which is just filling out forms and chasing people for reviews and delegating approvals and completing offer letters and making sure people start on time. I don't think that recruiters will be replaced, but I do think the job of recruiting as we know it today.
Hi there, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I have with me Rebecca Carr. Rebecca is the CEO for SmartRecruiters. And Rebecca was our guest actually on another podcast for the Unleash event in 2024. So, Rebecca, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. And do me a favor, give us a little bit of history on your background and tell us a little bit about your new role as CEO for Smart Recruiters and also your big news.
Sure, sure. The very big news. Yeah. So my background is in recruiting tech. I actually started my career as a recruiter. I saw a real problem in the tools and technology I was using. And by way of living in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, I found my way into product management roles, building applicant tracking systems over the years. Smart Recruiters is actually the third applicant tracking system I worked on and have been doing product development, design, API product management for most of those years. I actually left Smart Recruiters in 2021, right after my second daughter was born. That's how I'm always gonna remember that, by the way. I went, into more of a background screening and earned wage access product at Checker, and then returned in 2023 as the chief product officer, only to become the CEO about 7, 8 months later as interim, and then officially a couple months after that as permanent. We've invested a lot in, I wouldn't say pivoting the company. We've always had a great foundation of core workflow automation and great candidate experience in the recruiting journey, but we saw an opportunity with AI that we couldn't let go of, and we threw all of our engineers at really driving toward an AI-powered recruiting platform that ultimately got the attention of potential acquirer in SAP, and a couple weeks ago, we announced that they are intending to acquire us, hopefully to close in Q4 of this year, which is very, very exciting. Can't believe that after all those years, I think I've spent 10 years in total at Smart Recruiters, that we've made it to this place, but some incredible opportunity to differentiate, obviously, with such a market leader behind us.
Oh, yeah. And it's huge news. It really is. And SAP acquiring Smart Recruiters is a huge move, and it could have a ripple effect, right, across our entire TA industry, I think. And you can let's talk about that a minute. I mean, how do you think that's gonna reshape this acquisition will reshape the, Smart Recruiters product roadmap?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that last part or separately because I think our roadmap will accelerate in many ways. But as it relates to the market and the industry, I think there's always this pendulum that swings between best of breed vendors being the market leaders in recruiting tech and core HR really being the center of recruiting workflows. And when I started on Smart Recruiters, we were certainly living in a best of breed world. People were investing deeply in these standalone products like Smart Recruiters. There's others out there like Avature and Greenhouse and iSIMS and Lever at the time and JobVite, which was another product that I worked on prior. And I do think over the last couple years, the pendulum has been swinging back toward core HR. A lot of the big HCM players SAP, Oracle, Workday have started to invest quite deeply in the talent acquisition space. They see it as a great entry point for AI efficiency and insight. And they see it as a very painful piece of the employee journey and the candidate journey within their broader ecosystem and platform. I think SAP saying, you know what, we actually think that there's a lot of problem to solve, that this is an important thing for us to give our customers. Smart recruiters, we would love for you to do that for us, is the first of many statements that you'll see from core HR vendors. I think core HR is filled with people that know performance and learning and back office workflows very well, but historically hasn't been the draw for recruiting tech innovators. And they need that talent within their broader ecosystem. They need a real understanding of what great candidate experience looks like. And they will either acquire or hire or build very aggressively products that will allow them to continue to dominate in their customer base. And so my objective as now the potential future, I have to say that because we haven't closed yet. The potential future, my job is to really push the boundaries of innovation, to bring incredible efficiency and discovery and insight to the AI workflow in that recruiting journey. And if nothing else, SAP will invest only further in my roadmap to see if it can outpace its own competitors in delivering that to its global customer base.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, this could trigger some, consolidation, in the TA tech space, I think.
I think you're going to see some real innovators in the recruiting tech space get picked up by core HR. I mean, we are certainly one here, but the market has changed dramatically. The growth rates of a lot of standalone businesses have really stagnated. I actually was very proud of our growth rates over the last couple years, but as I understand it, I was one of very few that was able to maintain that kind of positive growth rate, great gross retention. A lot of vendors have been struggling with it. And so if you're a private standalone company, your investors are looking for opportunities to get you over that hurdle. And one is consolidation with your peers, and the other is strategic acquisition. And so do I think we're going to see a bit of both? Absolutely. Do I think you're going to see some big players come together? Probably. Do I think you're going to see Workday maybe make some moves? Yes. SAP maybe some more moves. I do not know because I am not in that conversation, but theoretically, yes, you could see that too. But I think investors need this a bit. The businesses do in order to maintain their momentum and retain great employees. And all of that comes together in a head with sort of what customers want, which is these all-in-one platforms or these unified platforms. And it makes for the perfect moment to do these things.
What about the smaller, agile players that are in the market right now? I know when we go to attend these conferences, we see a lot of small companies, and I keep wondering, you see the investors too, walking around, the conference halls, so you kind of wonder, is there a bigger conversation? I mean, because we're in the middle of a huge pivot right now in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say great new AI products are ones to watch. I was at an investor general meeting a couple of months back for one of our seed investors or smaller investors, and they were talking about the fact that they are looking for that next AI vendor that will take out SAP and Workday and Oracle because they think that there will be such a dramatic shift in business applications that inevitably someone will do something truly different, that is something to keep an eye out for. Now, the good news is that most of these big players, including SAP, have been very invested in ecosystem and have started to invest even deeper. They are looking for partners to experiment with, to understand their tech, to put in front of their largest customers and see if those products can deliver real customer outcomes. And so I actually see a great opportunity for some of these little companies to build the right relationships with these big behemoths, use them as a vehicle for experimentation, and then either allow them to help accelerate their own growth towards something much bigger or accelerate them to acquisition and incorporation into those suites. So I'm not surprised we see a bunch of them. This is such a disruptive moment, and this workflow is so in need of innovation and change that I've been impressed by what some people have come up with and been able to deliver really quickly to them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, those are really super good points because there is so much innovation right now. Y let's talk about the ATS market in general. We all love good trivia, and I love what you told me the other day about how the ATS market even got started,
Yeah.
right? Go ahead and share that. I was gonna, kinda talk about it, but I'll let you, since you're the one that gave me this information, share how the whole ATS market started.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think about ATS in three different phases. The first phase is the one that I started my career in, which was really like the early infancy, the Taleos of the world, let's call them. Those products were designed by product leaders that had previously built essentially supply chain and assembly line software. So the same way you move a package through a manufacturing plant is the way they thought of, well, candidates could move through a journey to be hired just like a package could be moved through a journey to be delivered. Um, and though, yes, there's a lot of similarities there, it is not necessarily the human connected personal journey that one expects when they're looking to find a job. And so in about 2010, you saw this wave of new applicant tracking systems come to the market that were like, in theory, this makes sense, but it's a horrible experience for people. It's it is it lacks sort of the personal touch and collaboration that's required to hire great talent. And so a new wave of best of breed vendors essentially rose during that moment, including smart recruiters that were flexible, that were cloud based, that were very focused on candidate conversion rates and hiring manager interaction with systems. And that was successful for some time. We're in sort of a third phase now where that is not enough. Adoption of these tools is weak. Hiring managers, interviewers, they don't want to log in and find the right button and source the right candidates. And AI offers an opportunity to take a lot of the administration that comes with recruiting and reducing it down to really four decisions, in my opinion. One is, who do you want to hire? Confirm for me who you need and what they need to know and when they need to start. Who do you want to interview? Here's a bunch of people that fit that bid. Who do you want to interview? Which one of the people you interview do you want to hire? Decision 3, and then decision 4, confirm for me an onboarding plan that's going to make them successful within your environment and culture. Everything else from scheduling to sourcing to job distribution to assessments to background checks can all be automated. And if we are able to deliver sort of 3.0 very successfully, the interfaces that we know today of applicant tracking system, I don't think will exist in 3 years. I think all of those decisions can happen in the hiring manager's flow of work. They can happen in Slack, they can happen in Teams, they can happen on text or WhatsApp with candidates. And so you see this we call it the composable, like this composable user experience, all these little buttons being broken apart and being surfaced through all these new channels so that decisions can happen without us needing to log in and understand and learn these like very big, robust, tedious interfaces the way we did long ago. And that's super exciting, especially for me. Because I was a more of an API product manager, so UI is important to me, but I would love to build a no UX, no UI product in the future. I think that would be super fun. I think that there's going to be a new energy that will come from, frankly, access to some of the world's best brands that sit within the SAP ecosystem today and have real problems to solve. I mean, there isn't, even up until this moment, there has not been a good applicant tracking system that serves both centralized and decentralized recruiting all in one. And I think one of the things that we are able to do in this bigger world is really maximize just that. If you are a large manufacturer, or if you are a large retailer or hotel chain or airline or technology company, inevitably you have really niche, high scarcity roles that you need to go hire for. And then you have a high velocity hiring motion that is really significant turnover, different requirements, lower level screening. And for us to be able to serve both and continue our mission in delivering that to the market, I think is going to help a lot of businesses. And SAP as an advocate will obviously be of great support and help to us.
Yeah, and I love the fact you bring up high velocity again, because like I mentioned to you the other day, you had introduced that term to me at Unleash a little over a year ago, and I've actually repeated it several times since then because I like the distinction between high volume and high velocity. Neither one of those terms were around until what, maybe 5 or 6 years ago?
Well, it was certainly different in that I think you oftentimes those those flows or those types that type of hiring was bundled into like temp contract contingent
Right.
work,
Right.
which is very different. You go to some of the world's largest, like I said, hotel chains or food delivery services or otherwise, these are permanent employees, full-time permanent employees. They just happen to have there's a lower barrier to entry. They don't require as much interview in order to get to the next stage, and they tend to turn over based on both the demographic and the base that they're serving. As a good example, pizza delivery drivers. You go to Domino's, these are full-time employees, but it's a student's summer job. They have to go back to school, so they turn over very quickly. And for no right or wrong, the Domino's is then faced with a very different hiring strategy. They're hiring for their corporate leaders, but they also have, thousands, tens of thousands of people that they're hiring on a monthly basis nearly in order to meet the demand of the market in each of the franchises that they serve or that they support rather.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. In fact, I interviewed Jim D'Amico and Taylor Franco from, well, this is a while back when they were both still working for Holland America Princess. And they had talked about, hiring temp workers or people, for, I guess they would be temp workers, for the
For
ships for
little stints, yeah, for ships, for sure. There's big ones like that. You see similar type of another one that most people think of as, like, very structured, organized, permanent employees, banking and finance. Obviously, there's a lot of analysts, there's a lot of investment bankers, these people work full time, but there's also massive customer support centers that
Oh,
they're hiring
true.
for and things like that, that are much more high velocity hiring motions that require a different type of recruiting workflow, a different type of product. And Smart Recruiters has done a good job of sort of establishing itself as the singular and only platform in the best of breed space that can do both. Because Winston's been very focused on high volume, and our foundation, our OS, has been very focused on corporate. And I'm excited to continue to push on that a bit because it is a real problem space for a lot of folks that don't want to have to use 2 systems. Reporting is difficult, integration is painful. We can solve that for them.
I know, we've just gone through that actually, because we use a smaller platform and we're going through an integration right now. It is a little painful. It's like moving, like a digital move, almost like moving your house. I know.
It's both exciting, terrifying, and extremely exhausting. Yes,
It
all
is
of
a
the
big, well, and the training that goes along with it, and you talk about, working with more than one system. It's not just the integration, it's learning all of these different platforms now that, and the APIs, that are gonna attach to these platforms, and
yeah,
everything's so new and there's so much change and so much transition. And, I mean, I know most companies don't wanna have to switch, ATS systems. It is a painful move for them, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
expen
what are
it's
some of the biggest challenges that you've seen in the ATS capabilities just over the last 5 years?
Oh. Well, I'd say there's certain so I'll break it into 3 categories. Um, when I first started at Smart Recruiters, we were definitely living in a talent economy. There were far more jobs than there were people to fill them. And I'd say over the last 5 years, especially in certain industries, that has flipped the other direction. The application volume coming at a lot of these businesses is significantly higher than it's ever been, and their recruiting teams, as a result of CFOs looking for efficiency within these organizations, have stopped investing in recruiting teams or have reduced the size of recruiting teams. And so you have more people coming in and fewer people to screen them. And so there's been a huge set of capabilities that have started to be developed around discovery. How do I find the needle in the haystack of my 10,000 applications? What are the 10 I should focus on right now? And that is a challenging problem, not just for a couple of reasons. One, data is really messy in the recruiting space, so normalizing it, evaluating it in an unbiased way, which is super important. All of that, it makes it difficult for systems to serve up that recommendation. But it's starting to happen and it's starting to get better, and that capability, that matching of people to jobs is one that I think you're gonna see accelerate exponentially. The second area I'd really call like an efficiency area, which is we see a significant amount of pain in the interview scheduling workflow in particular. So, like, you come through, you answer a bunch of questions, I go back and forth with the time. I need to find who's available. I need to reschedule when they're not. I There was an entire job, a whole group of people that were created interview coordinators for many years in order to do this. Unfortunately, to my point around CFOs finding efficiency, interview coordinators are also being reduced. So this is the perfect workflow for AI, because it is collecting data and providing a match and sending out the results to both parties. But you could say that there's similar inefficiency in where should I post? Where's going to be the most effective place for me to find candidates? I need to go create an offer that has a like compensation data that's fitting of the position in the market that's not going to be offensive. Like, there's a lot of research that goes into that whole recruiting workflow that AI can solve for, and so you're seeing a lot of innovation in reducing all of that headache that comes with getting people through a process. I'd say the third area that I'm most excited about, and I wouldn't say has appeared in the last 5 years, but is starting to appear and be more prevalent now, is that around delivering, like, proactive insight to businesses around what they could be doing better and more and differently in their recruiting workflow. The quality of hire is weak at this particular store for these particular roles. Is it because you have the wrong interviewers? Are you asking the wrong questions? Your turnover rates are higher here. Is that also contributing to an inefficiency in your store's P&L? Like, just understanding the big data behind recruiting and offering up cool capabilities to make people faster and smarter. Ooh, there's like some really fun projects there that have started to come out of recruiting tech. And frankly, if there's an area where I think smart recruiters will be able to accelerate in an ecosystem like SAP, it is there. Because with their business data cloud and our partnership with Visier and our partnership with so many others in that have like really strong BI, Power BI, Tableau type central reporting motions, our understanding of that data and our ability to serve up some really cool configurations and recommendations that are going to drive impact is, I think, an area of opportunity that I will not let pass me by.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. No, I mean, and you guys are innovators. I mean, this is amazing, and talking about the ATS, I mean, obviously we can't talk about it ATS anymore without talking about AI, right? Especially agentic AI. And you mentioned Winston. Talk about Winston for a minute.
Winston is our recruiting companion. We see him as like, when we first launched him, I thought of him as like the super suit on every recruiter. Recruiters are stretched super thin right now. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of like reduction in force across businesses around the world and HR departments, and recruiters need to wear multiple hats. And so Winston is our agent persona. Now, Winston does a lot of jobs across the recruiting journey, from candidate engagement and conversation and scheduling to matching candidates to jobs to very soon you'll hear a little bit more in our fall announcements, actually recruiter screens on candidates, both voice and video, to support, like reminding people to rate, scheduling interviews with candidates, serving up recommendations on how you could configure your platform differently. And probably what's most exciting about Winston is Winston it has a lot of friends, I'll say, in the ecosystem, meaning in the same way that a lot of businesses have been investing in MCP, agent to agent interactions, Winston is going to speak to other agents in the marketplace. So an agent like Vizier V, as a good example, is a is someone that agent can go, "Hey V, can you give me some ideas on what I could be doing differently?" And V can say, "Yes, here based on the data we have, here's 5 different recommendations that we would make to this user." You could have the same agent to agent interaction with a LinkedIn agent or an Indeed agent or an assessment agent or a background check agent or Slack as a good example. And so we very intentionally designed him to focus on workflow orchestration and the ability to deliver real value as a recruiter within the core workflow, but to be very open in engaging other subject matter expert agents across the recruiting ecosystem to deliver sort of a unified experience that helped people move faster in their hiring process.
Wow, that's a lot of information. Great. No, it's great information. I love it. Okay, a couple questions that come up from it though, as you're sharing this data, especially on Winston. So, how are we then going to, as recruiters, work with both Winston in Smart Recruiters as our go-to person, or if you want, or agent, go-to agent, I shouldn't say person, versus using like Chat GPT or Perplexity or some of the other.
Sure. No, it's great. Yeah. I mean, Winston is very focused on the hiring process. You won't necessarily use Winston all the time in Smart Recruiters. Winston will also sit in Slack and in Teams, it does today. And so a lot of what we're doing is bringing Winston to your flow of work. So any hiring specific questions that you would have, both structured or unstructured, we could support for you. Now, that could include helping you generate job descriptions, which we already do, or suggesting interview questions, or transcribing interviews and then creating and drafting reviews for you as a Gen AI workflow built into what Winston does. So, the intent being that Winston proactively takes on that role that you would otherwise have to open another browser window for, add some information, and get something spit out, which you copy and paste over directly in the conversational experience. That's one thing that I think AI is getting much better at, mind you, in many platforms, but has been slow to adopt in others, which is we find ourselves in this position where you're using this standard workflow. You then go to another browser window, you do stuff with ChatGPT, and then you're like copying and pasting it over in order for AI to be intuitive and really highly adopted and trusted. It's going to have to naturally take over the conversation so that you don't have to be cross system. There we're using a lot of the same open source technology in the workflow itself. And that's what we're trying to bring those micro experiences with Winston to our customers. And I'll be honest, it's not easy to do. It's not perfect yet. It's what but it starts with small problems. If I told you Winston solved the entire recruiting problem right now, I would be lying to you. Anybody would be. There is no such thing as a full end-to-end AI recruiter yet. There's a lot of people positioning themselves as that. I I would challenge a couple elements of it, but what we have done is we've said Winston has a couple jobs that it does really well. So use Winston to do these things. And then when you start to trust Winston to do these things, here's a fourth job and here's a fifth job and add it on slowly so that you can build real alignment and trust in the agent itself before you kind of throw yourself into the entirety of the workflow, which I think is a more natural way to roll out a product.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Rebecca, it's interesting you're bringing this up because I don't remember who the CEO of Perplexity is, but is he the one who just recently said that uh, OpenAI, I think he was referring to Perplexity, but OpenAI will replace recruiters over the next 6 months?
I I I disagree with the statement. I've heard this before. I I don't think that recruiters will be replaced, but I do think the job of recruiting as we know it today will not exist. I do think that I've actually seen some of our customers do some pretty interesting things. Like they've changed the role of recruiter to talent advisor as a good example. And those people are responsible not for the administration of the recruiting workflow, but for connecting with people, selling them on the company and the organization, strategizing on the types of roles and skills that will be required for that business to accelerate to its next step in growth and capability. And that is a more strategic, collaborative role around the growth of the business than what recruiting has unfortunately become in so many organizations, which is just filling out forms and chasing people for reviews and delegating approvals and completing offer letters and making sure people start on time. All of those the like I think I said 82% of the workflow recruiting workflow is or recruiting journey is administrative. If you took 82% away from a recruiter today, that wouldn't just mean that you need 18% of your recruiters. It means that that group of people can now do more of what they weren't doing before. Some of the things that are actually going to create real impact in your world and in your company and organization. But the job of recruiting itself today is not the job of recruiting I had when I started in recruiting. It's it's become very
Transactional.
transactional is a great word. Yes. Mhm.
That's how I've seen it over the years. When I started recruiting in 1988. And our roles, when you talk about talent advisors, that's kind of what we were back then. Because we didn't have the systems to be transactional, right? Everything was very manual.
Spreadsheet, paper, notebooks, like that. I mean, I remember when I started in recruiting, I felt like a relationship manager.
Yes.
Like, that's
Yes.
a lot of, like, the role I think I had. I met with a lot of people. I understood their aspirations. I connected them to organizations. I was a headhunter, so I worked in an agency.
Ditto.
And
Yeah.
I did iBanking recruiting predominantly and PE recruiting, so finance. And it was interesting because I would meet with these companies. I'd understand sort of their culture, who they were, and I was this matchmaker. And I held these relationships for long periods of time. In fact, many of the candidates I worked with back then, I still am connected to on LinkedIn and I still hear from and they still weigh in.
They do.
Uh,
Yep.
recruiting became like it's robotic at a certain point. And I
With
think
the
that
internet.
there yes, for sure. But that's why our mission at Smart Recruiters over the last couple years, we have a vision of making hiring easy, which I think is so simple yet so powerful and all the above. But our mission, which is more of like a 2 to 3 year vision with AI, was to humanize hiring in the age of AI and automation, which is just to like bring back the connection. Every single person that's listening to this has likely applied to and worked for a company. It is something that is so relatable and it's so personal and it's so connected to who you are and how you wake up and how you provide to your family that it's a little unfortunate that technology took that personalization away from the moment. I don't think it needs to, though. I think we can create space to bring that connection back. to this particular process, and business applications can layer on levels of intelligence and efficiency that meet the market where it needs to from a cost and growth and business acceleration standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a good point. And I think too, as agentic AI becomes more integrated in our hiring workflows, there's gonna be this balance shift, right, between human decision making and automated decision making. Where do you see that lining up?
Yeah. I Without breaking down the world of AI and how LLMs are built and iterated on and trained and otherwise, we're still a fair bit off AI understanding the context of a decision. There's a lot of personal alignment in making a hire. It's not just skill based. Now, I will argue there are some types of roles, like gig based roles, that are very, very transactional, and that's their intention. But the lion's share of the companies that I work with, people are coming, they're investing their lives, they're showing up at the office, they're investing their career and their development opportunities in an organization. I would say that context is something that AI still has a long way to go on. If you think about 50% of the reason why you take a job, it's not just the job itself, it's probably because you like the hiring manager that's sitting on the other side. AI is gonna have to still give us a short list of people to pick from that have the 50% of the skill that's required, but people are still gonna have to make that final call. People are still gonna have to challenge what the algorithm says. As a good example, internal mobility is one of the things that throws off AI at its finest right now. If you imagine I open a job as a CEO, I need an account director within my organization. I open that job, I post it to the world, and then one of my employees calls me and says, "Hey, Rebecca, I would really like to take a look at that job." And that person is not in the sales team, they might be on our customer support team. And I go, "Okay, that's interesting. You actually have great connection with customers. You know our product really well. You're selling me on this moment. Why not give you a shot?" So what do? I take that person, I add them to my ATS, and I say, "Hire this person. I've decided I'm going to hire this person." No resume or CV associated with that profile outside of a job title and a name, and they get moved to hired and the AI goes, "Wait a second. How are they a match to this job? I know nothing, like, they don't have they have compared to everybody else that applied, these people are not this person is not someone I would ever give a high or great match to, and yet you have hired them. What have I done wrong?" And that happens. Everybody can relate to that moment because every single person has done it. So until our behavior about how we connect people to jobs changes, it will be hard for AI to get everything right. So I think the automation of lining up a short list will be something that will be very easy to do. But making that final call and learning why people use that other 50% to sway them one direction or the other will require a level of context that AI will have to build and train on over time, and it might not ever get perfectly right. So when I think about
Because
automated
it's not human.
because it's not human, exactly. And so I think we will get a good 75% of the way there, but like I
That's a
said,
high number.
yeah, oh, yes. Oh, for sure. Because I think more of what we do every day will be online. I think the skills you learn, the articles you read, the emails you write, the certifications you gain will all be accessible. And so it will be easy to build a profile of who people are and what they can do to get at least that first foundation layer. And then you'll understand that these types of people are more successful in these types of businesses than these ones here. All of that will start to piece together, but people stay and are successful in jobs for 2 reasons. They love their hiring manager, and the job that they applied to is actually the one that they do every day. And the reason why people leave jobs is because one of those 2 things is not true. Neither of those things is super tangible. So, like, this is why I think there's still space, and you leave space for human decision making. Yeah.
I think about when you talk about AI coming to you and saying, "No, this isn't, the person that, we set up for you or whatnot." I'm thinking of this arm wrestle now with AI, over as it's learning, this process, and as it's trying to understand the decisions that you're making as a human. I just see this kind of like a digital arm wrestle, between.
I think actually one of the things that will slow it down is, well, there's a lot of things from a technology and physical standpoint, like the actual infrastructure required for computing at this level is far greater than what we've seen before. So there's all of that. But also people's willingness to lean into AI is a real hurdle for us to, if you think about how many candidates apply for jobs and in that candidate workflow, there's a box at the bottom, a consent box that says, "Hey, can you consent to being scored or screened in this workflow?" A good group of people still don't check that box. But if you think about what happens on the other side of that, it's actually quite unfortunate because as a product designer and a technologist, I have a list of people now, 50% of whom are scored and have a match, and 50% that just say not rated. If you are a hiring manager and you look at those lists, there is nothing I could do to remove the bias of that moment. The hiring manager will always look at the scored people first, even if the best people are in not rated. Because what's like a gray circle versus a green, a bright green and a bright blue and like that, you know what I mean? Like it's just it's the way we operate. And so I think that as more people lean into AI, as more people understand that it is not there to disadvantage you, but to advantage you in many ways, and the more responsible businesses get about making sure that the problems that AI could bring are controlled and understood and transparent to everybody that uses it, the more you'll see information flow through the models and the more successful you'll see those models become.
Hmm. Yeah. And going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, if you find somebody too on your own, and then that person isn't rated, as it maybe it's a non-rated person, but then you hire that person, that's also gonna change the dynamics as well, like you were saying,
Well,
on.
that could actually help the algorithm,
Right,
'cause even
exactly,
though that person's not rated,
exactly.
they still have data that informs why they were a good match. The not rating is merely a lack of representation of what they could have been against the job, but yes, there's a lot of complexity to how that data is translated, and then there's also point in time. Resumes are very static objects, they're not living. And so if you apply to a job or if you applied to a job on Monday, it's highly likely that you know more today because we consume information so much faster as a culture than you did on Monday, but none of that is aligned to the score. So your score becomes very stale pretty quickly.
Ooh. Huh. Going back to the recruiters. So let's talk about what AI can do to create skill sets then, for some of these jobs, right? Like let's take recruiter skill sets. What should recruiters be looking at then and looking forward to as practitioners? And what do they need to start learning to stay relevant? And how do they need to work with AI in that capacity?
I think every recruiter needs to understand what are the 2 or 3 places in their current hiring process that could benefit from that level of efficiency. Everybody wakes up in the morning and does things in their day job that they really don't wanna do. The chances of AI being able to support that in the future is is really high, so I would be investing in your own experiments and tools to remove those less than savory pieces of your day through automation and AI. But I'd say for recruiters in general too, one of the things that AI is good at is having a conversation with you. And one of my senior leaders actually said that he stopped listening to podcasts. And he still listens some of them sometimes, but he stopped listening to, like, podcasts that taught him something. He gets the news from it, but, like, taught him a skill. And he started talking to ChatGPT about something he wanted to learn. So he'd say, "Tell me about," like, let's just use the "Tell me about this particular bill that's being passed by the Senate." And AI would go back, "Well, what do you mean by that? What do you," like, almost as if you were having a conversation with a professor. You can do that for nearly anything. So, how do I communicate with a candidate that my offer is going to be below market? Well, what if I said it this way? What would be a better way that would be more convincing in order to say this? What if they respond this way? How would I actually react to that response? The If you think about an agent as a professor to a certain extent that you're dialoguing with and learning from, that's actually adapting to what you already know and what you don't know, there's a lot you can learn, and it doesn't have to be hard facts. It could be the way to position things, the way to be more persuasive, the way to negotiate more effectively. What do you think in a job that's hard to fill, the sources where that job is most successful. Sometimes just basic Q&A is how we learn the best.
Well, and basic Q&A for training, like what you're talking about right now, improving your own skills and understanding what your role is going to be and having AI help you. The funny thing about AI, though, ChatGPT, it always comes back with, "Oh, that's such a great question, and you're right on." I mean, it's very positive and it's very upbeat. So sometimes I have a hard time personally with ChatGPT being a really good, true devil's advocate for me because it's always such a cheerleader, you know?
Yeah, and the other thing is there's a lot of it is at least it has gotten better. There was a long time, not a long time, but a fair bit back, ChatGPT actually, if it didn't know the answer, would just tell you what they thought the answer was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly, deliver it to you with the level of transparency you were probably looking for there. Um, Now at least it goes, "I don't know that answer, but it could do this." And you could actually ask it the question, like, play devil's advocate, like, and see what happens. The retraining processes of these models is pretty impressive now, and the way that they're actually informing the conversation is much more human than it's been, in previous years. I think sometimes these conversations are a great way to just hear a different perspective from a very non-judgmental source at very low risk. You can be your most vulnerable self in that conversation. I've actually said to ChatGPT before, "I have no idea what you just said."
Yeah, I did too. I have too.
Like, make it a kindergartner
Yeah.
level, please.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, I mean, are you gonna say that to your professor at school? Probably not, you
Probably
know?
not.
Um,
Probably not. The
yep,
only
yep.
thing is, though, is your professor, though, is going to give you an answer based on experience and professional education, right? That you can kind of trust more. So I think we're still in that trust mode with humans more than we are with AI.
Interestingly enough, though, it's much more likely that the AI is more trustworthy.
Ah, true.
Uh,
As it's
because
learning.
in a hierarchy like that, you don't want to admit that you don't know, especially if you're like a PhD in astrophysics, and your student comes and asks you a question. The first thing you're gonna say is probably not like, "I have no idea." Like, you're probably gonna try to deflect, or you're gonna try to reframe. There's a lot of, like, human behaviors that happen there that Chat GPT won't do. Like, which it might get you to the right answer faster, but, like, it's still developing. It's just developing at a very accelerated pace.
So, Rebecca, in your view, going back to the ATS systems and just this evolution in our ATS world, what do you think the biggest misconception is that TA teams have about using AI in their ATS workflows?
I'd say that it's the thing we hear the most is really around concern that the AI is bias, that like they're gonna miss great people that they would have seen otherwise. I think we've all had the experience where we've gone to some marketing website and we've opened up that chat bot in the corner and we've started talking to it, and then we realize that it has no idea what we're saying, and we're like, go to help page, or you're on the phone with those automated machines and you're like, operator, 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 0, 0. You're like pushing the button because you're like in a spiral. Hasn't gotten to that point where it's always just really good everywhere. And so I think people assume that unless they've gotten a good result in the past, it's gotta already be wrong. And so, what I would instead encourage you to do is look in and go, what if this was right? Let me actually study what this has given me. And if it's not right, give it feedback. Almost every single agent has like a button where you can provide feedback, write in some content. Trust me, every team in the world is looking what you put in there. It's indexing it, it's understanding it, and if you look at each of these experiences, what if it was right? You start to you view those people and you start to see even small successes. I think you start to get past it a bit. I'd also just encourage people to demand transparency out of an algorithm. If you're using a product that doesn't spell out for you exactly how it got to the answer, it's probably a little bit scary. Like, start with products that say, "This is a great match, and here are the 15 skills that tell me why and the weighting of those skills, and what do you think?" And the more that we rely on products that are transparent, the more comfortable we feel that they're actually giving us the best information they have with the information that they've been given. Um, but also, we forget sometimes about our own subjective bias. People definitely look at lists, and based on a location or a name or a company or an education, they make a call on someone. The likelihood that, some of these matching products actually give you the right group of people is actually higher than them probably giving you the wrong group of people in most scenarios. Uh, so I think my advice would be enter with a positive mindset on the moment, not a pessimistic one. And that sort of changes the way you engage with it, the way you train it, the value you get from it from the start.
Okay, and that brings up a really good point then I wanna segue into. Let's talk about the power players that we are using right now that we have gotten comfortable with. LinkedIn, they've been, I mean, a go-to for how many years now? I think I started using them in 2009 maybe? 2000, I think it was around there. And Indeed. So, I think with AI reshaping what the jobs actually are going to look like moving forward, to your point, with all of the integration of AI into the ATS workflow space, how do you think that the Indeed model might evolve and look like, as we're kind of still using them? And same thing with LinkedIn, because we still do a lot of posting on LinkedIn and whatnot. How do you see these emerging trends?
Well, your AI is as powerful as the data you have, and the vendors you just mentioned have amazing candidate data. I would say that their understanding of what people know, what they're looking for, when they're available, what they should learn in order to develop against a certain career path is exceptional. And I anticipate that they will be real market leaders in helping people develop themselves and find the opportunities that are most relevant to them today. And that their agents will talk to agents like Winston and support a conversation which will serve up the right people for those companies and ultimately connect people to jobs. I think the vehicle of a job today is going to fundamentally change. It's too static. And so, do I think that their business models will forever be based on job postings? no, I think that they will actually get a ton more value from some of these other channels. I think we're still at a very we're at an infancy of that innovation that you're probably gonna see some real momentum from them on in the next year or 2. I would think they have a lot of very smart people thinking about these problems. But job postings as an object, which is, again, more like your 1.0 ATS. I mean, certainly a big piece of LinkedIn has been their talent business. That's LinkedIn Recruiter and job postings that were connected to them, right? There's still this idea that a job is like this canister that you put people into that are a fit. Do I think that jobs will be constructed the same way that they are today, like responsibilities and No, I don't. So the word job feels a bit 1.0, 2.0 to me. I think it will change. Skills is obviously an evolution of that. You've seen a lot of amazing research done across the industry around it. It's a harder thing to do because capturing skills, knowing skills, tracking skills is a data problem. But it's still one that I think people are working on. But no, I think that their understanding of who people are, what they want, what they know is extremely powerful, and that information in collaboration with what companies know, want, need, seek is gonna be very powerful, and I think you're gonna see great partnerships and alliances develop across business applications like SAP, Workday, Oracle with these types of vendors, or you see them continue to evolve very rapidly, very rapidly.
I agree. It's interesting. I gave a presentation for Open Water. It's a relatively new organization that's out right now. It's a collaboration of a lot of people from all sorts of different businesses who are advisors, in their chosen field. So the presentation I did was on career profiling versus creating a resume, creating a career profile, and how that may be the new trend, for basically representing yourself or presenting yourself, for a position or to a company. Because sometimes, you're just like you talked about a while ago, you have an employee who comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm interested in this position. I don't have the skills on that particular job description, but here's what I've been doing." So enter career profile, right? So that could be this next wave then, I think, just based on conversations we're having, in the industry of how people present themselves versus a resume.
Timing is another big one that plays a role in who, what, where,
Always,
when.
always
Um,
has.
it's a tricky one, but yeah, no, I think the resume itself, it will die, and there will be a different object for what you are and who you are and what you know. How that evolves, I think, will be fascinating to watch.
Oh, it will. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that LinkedIn's and Indeed's will drive a lot of that conversation for sure.
Do
Yeah.
you see potential consolidation of Indeed or LinkedIn with other larger organizations?
Well, I mean, LinkedIn's already in its Microsoft world today.
That's true.
Um, yeah, Indeed with Recruit, which obviously Recruit, a much larger organization investing in a lot of similar or broader HR and adjacent problems. I don't think you're. I don't foresee those businesses necessarily m joining forces with the traditional B2B players. Their business models are pretty different. The talent they have internally is also a bit different.
And it's true.
Um, I've been in B2B software, and I've been a product manager in B2B software for many years. It's a very different thing than B2C software. And I don't mean that you can't cross over, you absolutely can, but I think the interest in one versus the other attracts a different type of talent. I am very attracted to the type of customer feedback loop and back office, like deep complexity of configuration. Like that is fascinating to me, much more so than very fast, iterative testing of experiences that come from consumer driven motions. So, do I think you can have both? Absolutely. Do I think you can be great at both? Absolutely. Do I think maybe you'll see more consolidation? But I think you're more likely to see peers consolidate than cross those 2 that river, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting feedback. Thank you. I appreciate that because there's so much. Well, look at what's happening with Smart Recruiter and SAP. So there's, I don't know, there could be a little funnel that starts with,
Yeah,
as we
it's a
evolve.
fair prediction
Yeah,
that the market always offers up good surprises.
it does. It really does. If you were going to advise a TA leader today on what is the one thing that they should start doing right to stay ahead, and also this is a two-part question, and also what is the one thing that they should retire that won't serve them in an AI-driven future? What are those two suggestions?
Well, I would tell you that almost immediately go figure out how to automate all of your interviews with AI. That's like the easiest one of all time. If you aren't doing it, do it now. It's very low risk and it saves you a ton of pain and headache. But to boil that to like a higher level, start experimenting right now. Like even with a small tool or a small piece of your workflow, don't be the last company to adopt AI in a piece of your workflow because you're waiting to see what the market delivers. Start now. The time is now. As it relates to, and believe me, I come across a lot of businesses that haven't even begun to do this yet. What I would tell you to stop doing is believing that job description generators are AI. They are, but, like, Gen AI in its purest form in those pieces of the workflow are cool and they help you, but they haven't even really scratched the surface of giving you the efficiency you want. Like, go deeper. Let AI take an action for you, do something for you, and do it in a very low risk motion, like interview scheduling, as a good example. I think there's a lot of opportunity. You see a lot of people that um, confuse automation with AI, and they're very different things. Automation should be table stakes. It should be in your workflow. It should already be in all your products. If you're using products that don't have it, you probably are using the wrong products. And I don't want to be rude about that. It's just like kind of how I feel. AI is that next level. And I think there's a lot of people that have sort of stopped at this automations point and said, okay, we've adopted AI, but just because you have an if this, then that kind of workflow built into how you operate, you aren't actually taking advantage of the power that's sitting in front of you. Um, and I wouldn't retire that automation. I would assume it to not be enough, and unfortunately, you see people sort of stall right after they adopt certain those small little I call them like AI fairy dust.
I
AI
love that. That's good.
but they don't actually lean into the real workflow, and I think that it's gonna come at an impact to your candidate experience in the future if you don't change it. Yeah.
Yeah, good points. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate your keen insight here and also your industry foresight. I mean, looking ahead, this is important data. This is important information to have because we're all like just sponges right now for information on what to do next. We really are. And it's, I think, a bigger challenge now that I recall when we entered into the internet phase. I mean, back in the mid 90s, what's the internet going to do? But it seemed like that was more of a slow roll into technology than this is. This is like fast, like you mentioned,
This is
we're just,
fast.
yeah.
This is very fast. Yeah, and I understand that. We understand. We're trying to keep pace too. I mean, this is fast, but all things come out of moments that like all a lot of good things come out of moments that surprise you like this. And I think we'll look back in 5 years and we'll go, "Oh, we were stumbling there for a minute, but we found our stride."
Well,
Yeah.
and we talked about the ATS when it was first developed, and I still love the story and just the trivia around it was developed like an assembly line process, and that's automation right there. correct? So if we look at that as the automation piece of it and where we're going now with AI, you can kind of see the differences a little more when you look at it from a bigger picture. I think for me, I think that helps. So your information here, Rebecca, is just it's helped me, honestly, in having this conversation with you.
Good, well, thank you for having me, I really appreciate it.
Oh, definitely, and I'm confident everybody listening and watching is gonna walk away with a better understanding as well. I know I am. So
Good.
thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise and your perspective. Really
Yeah,
appreciate you being here.
you bet.
All right. Thank you.